So, Brad, you and I, we were just starting a conversation the other day about whether we think that confidence can be taught. And of course, I think we need to repeat this here, the beginning of the conversation, and see where this leads us. So, Brad, do you think confidence can be taught?
For the podcast, shall I do the short answer or the long answer?
You pick.
So look, in essence, my fundamental feeling is no. But what I recognize is there must be a caveat to that, because for me, confidence is intrinsic. It comes from within. So when I see these courses saying, build your confidence, the 10 easy steps to confidence, part of me, I get a little bit frustrated, Frank. I'll be really truthful, because I don't know genuinely from a psychological point of view if I can make you feel confident. I might be able to help you tap in to your confidence levers. So in those moments, if I share techniques with you that you could use, or practical, pragmatic tools, techniques that in the moment, if you use them, they would work, you could have confidence in them. Would it make you feel confident? I don't know if I've got that much influence. So the short answer is no, I don't think I can teach it to make someone feel confident, but I do think you can teach techniques that if people use them over and over again and become used to them, they can be confident in using techniques that work for them. So I might have wimped out of actually answering the question totally directly by giving a caveat, but I feel there's a caveat to this one. I don't know, what's your view once you've reflected on that answer?
Yeah, well, sadly, for this incredibly confrontational episode, I actually agree with you.
Right, good. It's a good start.
In the context of that, you can't read about push-ups and then have muscle, right? So, I mean, learning something or teaching something in the sense of here's information and that's all you need, that's not going to happen for building confidence. I mean, it's just not possible, because maybe we need to dissect a little bit what is actually confidence, what that means, and for example also how that relates and how it could be different, for example, to the term self-esteem, because I think they may be linked, and for the sake of finding out if confidence can be taught and how or not, I think it's important to differentiate that a little bit. So the way I would define confidence, it's how we feel about our abilities to perform a role or a function or a task, or it's very competency related somehow. And self-esteem is more about, how I feel about myself, how the way I look up, the way I think about myself, and maybe my abilities. And I think they're linked, but they're not the same thing. First of all, did I miss anything, or am I wrong?
No. I think of, the confidence comes with competence.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you on that. If I'm starting working in your team today and I've never done the job before, you can show me how to do something. Now, I may have the confidence that I can do it, but I may not be confident in doing it. So I can show confidence. And maybe this is something else we'll come on to, how you can appear confident, the fake it till you make it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is now, I believe that, confidence is more the result of things that you did, such as acquiring competencies, such as having made experience, such as having conquered something you were afraid of at one point. So it's a consequence of all those actions. The thing is that I believe is, and maybe this is not, maybe it's more in the semantics. You can't teach confidence, but I believe that, for example, a teacher or a coach, can, show you a system and help hold you accountable, reflect back on your progress, and acknowledge your successes. But the other person always has to do the heavy lifting. You have to do the heavy lifting. Nobody can do this for you, right? You are the one who has to actually begin doing these things. So I think it can be taught in the sense of, and this is really semantics now, it can be taught in the sense of that you can get help getting there. But still, you're the one who has to do it.
I think that's really important as well, because confidence is an intrinsic motivational feeling. So there isn't anybody else who can give it to me. In fact, how many people do you know in your own history as a people manager where you were giving people, you know, we talked about praise last time. How many people did you give praise to where you were trying to help instill that confidence feeling in them around their competency, and they would say to you, oh, Frank, yeah, thanks, I'm just doing my job.
As an expression of modesty?
As almost not just a modesty, as an expression of they're not actually that comfortable in understanding what it is that might be going on in that moment, which is their confidence is building.
Yes, it could very well be. I'm sure that has happened. At the same time also, though, and that's one of the other things that I said to you, something super powerful for helping someone to make a step that will then help them acquire confidence is to express to them that you have faith in them, that you believe in them, that you believe in their ability to master something or do something that they themselves don't see themselves ready to do.
Yeah, that's a fascinating one for me, especially as an ex-sports coach. You've immediately reminded me of a young woman whose name I won't mention, and she played football for me for a league club for 5 years. Frank, as a female footballer, well, just as a footballer, actually nothing to do with being female, as a footballer, on the training pitch, she was magnificent. She could do the Cruyff turn. She could pass a ball 50 meters like to a £1 coin sitting on the ground. You know, she was so accurate. She had a super shot when she hit it through her laces. Oh, it was poetry in motion for me to watch. But when you put her on a pitch in a match against people she didn't know, she disappeared. She just disappeared. And I remember her father used to come and watch the training. Used to frustrate me a little bit because everyone's a coach, right?
Right.
And he always used to be like this in my ear, telling me how great his daughter was. And I used to say, she is. I wish she could replicate that in a match. And she played up front. She was a striker. And we were playing in a game in a big cup match. And the striker who was playing was an Australian woman who had scored 4 goals in the game. And there was maybe 25 minutes to go. And her dad comes over to me and says, hey, are you going to bring on my daughter? And I said, I'm thinking about it. Yes, but I don't need your feedback right now. We're in the middle of a game. And I brought her on with 15 minutes. The game was won. She didn't have a big influence. And he came over to me and he said, you know, you're missing an opportunity not playing her. And I remember saying to him, if you could help her build her confidence so that she could play in a real match rather than just a training match, that would be great. And it reminds me of, you know, people with presentation skills. Let's say you and I are going on a presentation skills training. In fact, one of the first times we engaged together, you engaged me with your people on a presentations workshop to help them become more confident in how they presented.
Yeah.
I can teach those people all the tools and techniques to deliver a confident presentation. But unless we uncover what it is that makes them feel nervous when they stand up, they'll never be confident with all the tools in the world. So that, for me, is then the self-esteem connection that you're making.
100%. This is exactly it. Actually, I think it's, I heard about this at least because I'm not playing football myself and never was so interested in it. But I heard that it is a very common thing that when people, even kids, if they play and they're amazing in training and so on, and in the moment they go into a match where they know there's let's say a professional observer that may, hire them or not, it's all gone. It's all gone because they're so afraid that they, maybe not only be judged by that judge, but also about what if they fail? What are my parents are going to say to me? What are other people going to think of me if I fail? And there is a really, really big anxiety and fear that is then completely sabotaging your courage, so to speak, to perform just the way you can.
Right. So maybe when you ask the question, what can we do to help influence people's confidence, is maybe we can adopt a more coaching style to get people to understand what is it that would release them from their belief systems. The belief systems that block them, whether it's fear, courage, what people will say, whatever it might be, that block them from launching themselves into playing with absolute freedom.
Yeah, that is the secret of, I think that's where we can help the most, right? Is just figuring out or helping the person figure out what is it actually that makes you feel uncomfortable, that you're afraid of that could happen, what's going on in your head, and then trying to find a way of, how to let go of that. I know it's, most advice is actually very simple, isn't it? And most of the time it's just do it. But that's not helping, it's not enough, right? you know the answer is I should be doing this. Everybody knows the answers I should be doing this. Everybody knows I should be, I don't know, having the courage to walk over to that girl and ask her for her number, right? Or I should be just, presenting my latest, strategy idea because I think it's great. Or whatever it is, it's just do it. But why doesn't this work for people? Because it's just ignoring the fact that there is something, right, mostly in your own head, that is sabotaging this courage.
I think I have a feeling you may have seen the post as well on LinkedIn this weekend, where someone shared a post about why 70% of people on LinkedIn don't post anything. And the highest percentage of people who don't post anything is because they're not confident that what they'll post will be any good.
Right.
How do you change that
post? I have a question about that. Was there also something about, because that's what I would suspect plays a big role also, is that people are actually afraid of what their peers, customers, whatever, are going to think of them, and they have a particular opinion.
And their companies, yes.
No. So I'm trying to work with people in a way that I want to really encourage them to taking steps to not caring about what other people are saying or thinking. That is really, this is magic. If you acquire that skill that you don't really care too much and you don't let it come too close when people are giving their judgment about you. Both whether it's negative, but also positive. It can, you don't need other people's opinion to go to your head and then determine what is your choices, what are your choices, what's your course of action. It's both of it, right? And I think I've seen magic happening there, to be honest, when that happens, when a person starts to, begins to work with themselves and saying, okay, I've heard you. Actually, that doesn't change about, what I want to do or how I think or what my aim is and so on. So more or less like, thanks for the feedback, but it's, for the moment, it's just that I still make my own decisions.
Well, that's the beauty of feedback, right? When you're strong enough to take it, I can choose to give you feedback. You get to decide how you use it.
Yes. And there's another interesting thing about being afraid what other people think of you. That then eats into your courage and it eventually stops you from acquiring confidence. A lot of this is in your head. You think that maybe your mom is going to give you a hard time if you say, I'm going to stop my professional career as a lawyer and become a musician, for example. But then, in fact, if you would do that, your mother would be incredibly proud of you. You're just thinking that's the reaction that you're going to hear.
Completely. We all tell ourselves stories. We all tell ourselves stories. And one of the ways when I'm working with people on the same topic, you know, how to protect yourself from other people's views or attitudes. And as a psychotherapist, I do a lot of work with young people. And often they have mental health issues of varying degrees. And a lot of it sits within the self-esteem sphere.
Yes.
How I'm coming across, have I got something to say? When I'm out with my friends, I'm very quiet because, you know, I don't want to say something stupid, or all these kinds of things that get in the way. And we all tell ourselves stories. And one thing that I learned very early on in my teens, it was taught to me by my parents. So I mentioned before, yeah, my mum and my dad, who taught me the best and the worst lessons of life, by the way.
Tell me.
My dad always used to say to me, Brad, whatever people think about you says more about them than it does you. And it took years for that to really settle in for me. But once I believed it, so whatever you think of me, Frank, it's completely up to you. Now, I can change your thoughts towards me by how I act, of course. But ultimately, I've got no control over what you think. That's for you. You've got to own that. I'm interested just to reverse a little bit back to a point you were making earlier about, you know, the influence we might have on helping others build their confidence. A lot of it comes from our family upbringing, our teachers, career coaching, you know, when we're at school, teachers saying, oh, you'll never amount to anything, or you can't do that because you're this or you're that. The influence of words and what we believe goes to your point. If we could only learn that it's what we think that's important, maybe we could actually create a generation of really confident people. Because it's built over years, right? It's not a one-off. If I say to you, oh, that's no good, Frank, that's not going to knock your confidence. But if I keep telling you, oh, Frank, every time you produce something, it's no good, then it's going to affect your confidence a little bit. You wouldn't be human. So the power of the interactions we have with managers at work, with our friends and family, this is really powerful. We don't even realize it. You know, when our older brother says something to us.
Yeah, it's as a child or as a teenager, that is a tough thing, because your frame of reference is usually your family. What if they're not supportive? What if they're negative? What if they're more dragging you down, maybe with good intentions to keep you from something that's unsafe or what they don't believe is a good thing? But then you really have a problem, because you don't get that kind of support growing up. But even so, I mean, for everybody, whether that's a teenager now or 50-year-old adult, some of us might be carrying some of that judgment that we always accepted. But it's time to sometimes question that. And as I said in another episode, sometimes if people are dragging you down, the ones that you usually hang out with, the only way for you to build confidence or the number one step for you to build confidence is to spend less time with those people. Because, as you say, this repeated message of somebody not believing in you, not believing in what you're trying to do and achieve, it will eventually get to you if you have not acquired the skill to not hear what people are saying.
And that's based on their stories. It's not even based on the person who's going through it, right?
Precisely. But then there's also the things such as, I mean, confidence is great, but you can also be overconfident.
Indeed.
And, you know, as a parent, sometimes you have to watch out that your kid is not too overconfident, in the sense of, I can run across this big boulevard without, you know, taking care of the cars. You know, so maybe there's a compromise there somewhere in between. But for these, I don't know, little abilities, I think you always have to somehow, for yourself, but also maybe for others, specifically when you parent, is to be aware of what's the actual risk. You know, so if I fall down this very likely I'm going to hurt myself a little. Is that so bad? You know, they have to, there's always, when we try new things, there often is some degree of risk. Often we inflate it in our minds. We think it's a huge risk, but then it isn't. But it's also not good to be completely unaware of what risks might be.
In the last 5 years of your life, can you think of something where you've taken something on where you hadn't done it before, it was going to be completely new, and you wouldn't necessarily have competent confidence?
I just have, and maybe that also came through experience. I have enough evidence in my life that shows me if I want to learn a competence, I can do that.
Right.
So if I go into something new that requires me to have new competences, I'm not afraid of the process. But I'm also aware that I need the competencies for me to be confident at one point in what I want to do or achieve. So for me, it's completely acceptable to go into an unknown, or let's say where at least not everything is clear on how it's going to turn out, into an adventure of some sort, because I know I can prepare myself on that journey. And I'm confident that I can.
Yeah.
So, however, of course, there are also people who mean well. They're saying, "Oh, that's so adventurous," or "That's such actually you're taking a big risk," and so on, and they mean well. But I've learned over time to, honestly, to not to listen.
Yeah.
I learned to not to listen in the sense of that other people's fears will determine whether I'm going to make a particular life experience or not.
And the psychology behind what you say there is your belief system is strong enough to carry you through a new experience without competency, because you know you'll make it on the other side. You might not know quite how you're going to get there, but you trust the process that you will, and you can take it on with a smile, your belief system. Imagine if you're thinking of doing what you've done in the last few years, where you didn't have that inner feeling of confidence and competence built up over years of both successes and failures. They'd never make that leap. I wonder how many people might be listening to this where they really want to do something, and if you ask them why they're not, the real answer is because I don't have the confidence.
I'll tell you what, I'm just taking a wild guess here. If 100 people would be listening to what you just said, secretly 80% of them would be saying, yeah, that's me too.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going a little bit overboard with this, but I think I'm not.
How can we change that?
Yeah, well, in the end, it comes a little bit comes down to what I earlier discredited as being a too simple answer. And the too simple answer was, at one point, you just have to you gotta face the fear and you just go do it, because you need positive evidence that you can succeed in something. Maybe you don't use the big rocks first. If your confidence is very low on something, take smaller steps. But it's not saving you from actually taking steps. You have to take some steps. And it's miraculous how even small successes can give you enough courage to try the next bigger thing. And it's not a very long journey. We always think like this is something I'm hoping to acquire in my lifetime, but no, most things you can be actually very fast with. Some encouragement from your own successes, from the people around you, and from the stories that you're telling yourself. Few ingredients, Brad.
Yeah, it really is. And those stories that we tell ourselves, I think, is where we can really practice when we're on our own, in those quiet moments, in the shower, when we're lying in bed, when we're stuck in traffic or on public transport, when we're caught in our own head. where we tell ourselves these stories. And it goes back to something we touched on a couple of months back now, you know, being the DJ of the soundtrack in your head. To build confidence, I need a different record to play, because if the same record's been playing for years, that's not going to help.
Yes, and do you remember, I think it was when we were talking about anxiety, there's this question that you will need to ask yourself is if a thought in your head, a song that's playing in your head, not literally, but you know what I mean, is actually giving you some sort of anxiety and makes you feel bad, then you can ask yourself, is this helping me right now? What I'm thinking right now, how is this helping me? Just as like a snap with the finger that just gives you this awareness that, wait a minute, right now I'm telling myself something that's not helping me. You recall that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great reference back to something that we talked about, because so many of us in the moment, we don't make the time to audit ourselves. We just believe what we tell ourselves. So actually, one of the greatest tips maybe we could share with people who are looking to build their own inner confidence, not outer confidence that you can fake, but that inner confidence, is audit what's going on in your head. And the quickest way to audit what's going on in your head is to check whether or not it's a helpful thought.
Yeah. Actually, I have an interesting technique that I learned from a book that was actually teaching your skills to ride a motorbike.
Okay.
There was a very, very accomplished teacher and trainer. I forgot the name because it's a couple of years ago, but I still remember this because I'm still doing this. So he was suggesting, because if you want to learn a particular technique on, how to perfectly, brake before a corner so you can, have the best possible course through the corner, there were certain things that you need to be doing. However, each time you're doing this wrong, you were supposed to have, like a little counter on your motorbike where you just, hit a button and would just count one up. I never had a counter, but that's not the point. And the number doesn't matter. It's just the affirmation, the physical affirmation that, okay, I just realized I made a mistake. So you might just as well, tip with your thumb on some part of your motorbike or something like that. Because what this does, it actually creates the awareness in you, right, I need to remember to do this better next time. And I think in this sense also, when we're talking about confidence and acquiring a skill and so on, maybe when you're a little bit afraid of something and you start to tell yourself a story in the hand, maybe you need to also do some physical gesture. Maybe you touch your elbow, I don't know what, it doesn't matter. It's just to acknowledge that, all right now I'm thinking something that's not helping me. And that might not be true.
And it's used in all forms of therapy, this idea. It's even used in extreme versions in aversion therapy, when you're trying to get people to stop really negative behaviors, or when they're getting really stressed. And some people will wear an elastic band on their wrist. And when they start to feel the stress coming, they pull the elastic band against their skin and it snaps a little bit. It can be painful if you pull it hard.
Right.
And it physically snaps them out of the feeling. Oh, don't have those thoughts. Don't have those thoughts.
Yes, and you know why I think this is a really good advice for you in the process of acquiring confidence is because we all know we're going to sabotage ourselves along the way, at least we're going to try to.
Yes.
So each time you realize you're sabotaging yourself, even if you can't help yourself in the moment, I think this little physical awareness piece, let's call it like that, it is going to snap you out of it.
Mm. Yeah, it's the conscious, deliberate action. And maybe this goes to the point, something else we've talked about before. So these ideas are all linked, where if I practice something every day, but I practice it wrong, I don't necessarily improve.
True.
So I need, when people say, oh, well, practice makes perfect, actually, that's not true. practice creates habit. Practice with feedback can get you a little bit closer to perfect.
Yes.
Or excellence, maybe is even better than perfect. So I'm wondering, for those people who are thinking they're not confident, when you were saying before, you've got to take some steps, maybe it's about just taking the first step. To your point, going up and asking someone for a phone number, going and deciding to try a new maneuver on the bike in the safest way you can. My player taking on 3 people rather than being frightened they're going to be tackled and it's going to hurt.
You know, there is probably a lot more to the subject than we can cover now. I think we've been going on for a while. But I think one thing that should be encouraging is, because we understand now that most of it is in our head, also means that we have the power to upgrade it. We have the power to change it. It's not a set thing. I don't think it's something that you're, born with and it forever stays that way, like a third arm or something like that.
No,
right? You have the power to actually adjust whatever is holding you back, so you can begin the journey on acquiring the confidence you want.
Adjust and upgrade. I think you've worded it perfectly. Well, considering we were not going to agree, we've ended up agreeing.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think so
We'll
too.
revisit this topic again. There's more to discuss with it. That was lovely. Frank, always a pleasure on Real Talk.
Yeah, take care, Brent.
See you later.